Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Uncaged podcast. I am so delighted to be here with you, as I always am, and I'm really excited this week to be sharing with you the wisdom of Ignazio Dentici, who is someone who has been my own spiritual guide over the past couple of years. He is an Italian now living in England, and he specializes in quantum healing hypnosis technique, as well as spiritual guidance, spiritual mentoring, and meditation teaching. Ignazio has been on his own spiritual journey over the past 20 years or so, and I wanted to share his wisdom with you today. I wanted to share about the quantum healing hypnosis technique, what it is, how it could benefit you, get into some deep conversation about spirituality. And that is exactly what we did in this episode. I really hope that if you are spiritually curious, that this is going to be valuable for you. If you're a bit more advanced on your journey, that you might just enjoy this chat about spirituality. And yeah, if you feel like this is something to explore, I would highly recommend working with Ignazio. I feel like I'm about to pick up my spiritual mentoring with him again to keep me on the spiritual straight and narrow. Just such a wonderful energy. And so you can check him out at his website, www.humanspiritualevolution.com. And I'll put all the links to this in the show notes so that you have got access to his wisdom. You can attend online meditation classes with him. And if you're in and around the kind of High Wycombe area in the UK, hopefully once things open back up again, you'll be able to attend them in person as well. But all that being said, I really hope that you enjoy this conversation and that it leaves you with some new insight, perhaps a new path to explore, a new avenue to explore when it comes to your own spirituality. And just, yeah, from my own experience, finding my own spiritual path and connecting with my spirituality and my higher self has been one of the most valuable gifts in my life. Perhaps don't talk about it that much, but it has been an absolute revelation for me. And I think I'm inspiring myself to do a whole podcast on this particular topic. So anyway, I'm going to shut up so that you can dive in and listen to the dulcet tones of Ignazio in this conversation. Enjoy. So welcome everybody to this episode of the Uncaged podcast, and I am delighted today to be talking to Ignazio Dentici from Human Spiritual Evolution, one of my spiritual mentors, and I thought it'd be really interesting for me to bring him on and talk all things spirituality. So welcome, Ignazio.
Oh, thank you. Hi, Karine. Beautiful to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining me. So, as I always do with my guests, I know you better than I know you. So, yeah, if you want to just give us a brief intro as to who you are, what it is that you do, and then we'll get into a little bit more about exploring kind of your story and how you came to be doing what you're doing now.
Sure. So, first of all, my name is Ignazio, and I live, in England. I've been living here for about 12 years now, maybe 13,
Yeah.
close. And I moved here from Italy, where I was born and raised. I was born and raised a bit between the U.S. as well, because my mother was from Chicago. Is from Chicago. So, but I came over to England to work as a chemical engineer in water technology. Um, at the time, I already had a strong passion, to say the least, in spirituality and meditation, and I'd been meditating for a while. So I
Mm.
came here, and the path of meditation and then with hypnosis became stronger and stronger. And so about 3 years ago, I left my corporate job and I started to devote myself completely to spiritual development in different forms and ways. And I like to do many things, so I do. But mainly through teaching meditation and spiritual mentoring and hypnosis. Those are the main ways.
Yeah. So it was something you had always been into meditation. Sounds like it was part of your life.
Yeah, well, I have been for a while now, so um, but it happened quite from one day to another to me.
Okay.
So, some people get into it gradually. I just
Mm.
like had, a moment of complete falling in love with it and discovering it in a way that was very spontaneous. More than 20 years ago in Sicily, I just kind of woke up one day and I was completely immersed in this like new meditative energy that I knew nothing about. And I just started meditating for days and days until kind of I realized that that's what I was doing. I kind of looked it up.
Yeah.
Early, internet, I wasn't that good with that, but and then I found courses and meditation teachers and masters, and so I've been practicing since then.
Yeah. So interesting. Would you think there was a catalyst that
Yeah,
caused you from one day to the
yeah,
next?
absolutely. And I figured this out a bit more in hindsight and looking back,
Mm.
but and I think it's very in theme with how your podcast is called, Uncaged, because at some point in my life when I was like in my early 20s, I realized that there was something off
Mm.
about the world and about me, almost, like the matrix pill kind of
Yeah.
thing. But I started to realize that actually it was more with me. it was I who was very rigid in certain
Uh-huh.
things. And I remember starting for the first time, a notebook where I was writing some things, and this phrase from the song of Bob Marley, I don't know if you know it, Redemption Song,
Mm-hmm.
that says, emancipate yourselves from mental slavery, none but ourselves can free our minds. And that kind of phrase just reverberated in me. And so I started writing that, and I started realizing that I had a lot of issues, essentially, if we want to call them that way.
Yeah.
And once that started to happen, then that opened a door into these also strange metaphysical things, very, very human, but very strange. Like one day my breathing would completely change, and I would just be breathing so slow and so deep for the whole day.
Mm.
And I would just be in a completely different state of consciousness that
Yeah.
never happened to me in my life before. And even this I figured out more in hindsight, that the breathing had changed, and my whole energy, and then that ceased after a day, and a few things like that, until there was that big boom from one day to another. But
Yeah.
it was this sense of not being free, and that there was
Mm.
something about myself that I didn't quite understand, but that was blocking me in being free.
Mm. Interesting. And did you find it scary or unnerving, the kind of the things
um
that were happening to you?
no, because when when that day happened, I was immersed in such love
Mm.
and coated into this like blissful energy that I didn't really care about much. I mean, it was then kind of as I slowly came down from that cloud, which I did. Then I was like, I was more left with more doubts. You
Yeah.
know, how can this happen? Why is it happening? What is it? And later I found, I realized it is a form of spiritual awakening.
Mm.
Maybe happens more all at once. It's like falling in love. Some people fall in love gradually, some people
Yeah.
bam, 1 second after the other completely. And I
Yeah.
was like that for me.
Yeah. It's fascinating because when I compare to my own journey, mine was probably late 20s when I just happened to meet somebody who happened to suggest that I might be a perfectionist, and I was like, no, don't be ridiculous. But that was the beginning. You read a book and you think, yeah, that's undeniable. Like, if that's what a perfectionist is, and
Mhm.
that's me. But my transition, my journey is definitely one of the more gradual ones, compared to yours. And I know we've worked together, and yeah, so the drive and stuff that is still in there, which is definitely what part of my path to try and release some of that.
Yeah, beautiful.
Um, but do you feel like that this awakening, this was like always part of your path?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And then we might go onto more metaphysical things, like
Mm.
potentially um the fact that there is a reason for which we have this life.
Yeah.
There are kind of directions that we choose to go in before. And but definitely, again, after more than 20 years from it happening, I realized that it was almost a little bit like a soul putting an alarm clock on and saying, these things will happen, and,
Yeah.
can happen. They don't have to, but, there's the opportunities, and you can always choose. You're always free.
Yeah. And that's what's something really interesting for me actually as well, because I'm learning a lot about like sacred contracts, which is, we choose before we come in what we are here to do, but then you're saying, but you still have choice.
You can always break a contract, even in earthly life.
Yeah.
There might be clauses, but any contract can always be broken.
Yeah.
You know.
So you get to choose whether you
Yeah.
you fulfill your path or
Yeah.
not.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
yeah, you might have a bit less choice, in the sense that, like, sometimes if you throw yourself off a plane with a parachute, you're flying down. You can think about what you're going to do when you get to the ground, but you're unlikely to be able to go back, into the airplane. So
Yeah.
some things in which we're projected, we might be quite strongly projected in, and it might feel like we don't have that much choice, but it's only because we've actually just made a choice, jumped off, the plane with a parachute, and now, we better choose to turn open the
Let's choose to
parachute
open
off.
the parachute.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
And
I like that analogy. It's a good one. Like you say, we've kind of that jumping out of the plane is us deciding, like, we're right, I'm coming in with this particular purpose, with these particular gifts. And then it's our choice whether we choose to open the parachute and have a nice, not to say it's always going to be easy if you choose to follow your path, that's for sure. But in my view, at least, it should be easier.
yeah,
More joy, more aligned, at least,
yeah.
I think. Yeah. Um, and this is, just going off on a little bit of a tangent, but what do you think it is that stops people from opening their parachute sometimes? Like, you must have seen people
Mm,
who just choose
mm.
not to pursue the path that is theirs.
I think that is also a choice. And I think the main reason, this is a little bit taking a bit of an overview, that some experiences, even though we think we don't enjoy them, we are getting something from them, and we are also experiencing them.
Mm,
And experience in itself is an objective, in
yeah.
this life. So you might not realize that there are some parts of you that haven't completely absorbed that experience, and that you want to do it again, and maybe from a slightly different point of view. And so that's where kind of self-knowledge comes in, trying to figure out, if I am going in a certain direction and making a certain choice, which I think clashes, I don't know, with my better wisdom, what is that part of me that is making that choice thinking? What is their take? What is their objective? So I think it's, almost, to use a very simplistic term, unfinished business
Yeah.
is something that.
Yeah, because I can certainly see from my own life, and this is talked about in many of the spiritual practice, in particular Course in Miracles, how you will continue to get the lesson until you learn the lesson. So, like, what you're saying effectively is sometimes perhaps we feel like, I haven't fully learned that particular lesson. I'm going to go round again,
Sure.
get a little bit of a different angle on it.
Yeah.
Um,
But lesson is
yeah.
also a very, in a good way, a very mental way of putting it, because there is, an understanding, something to be learned, but there's also the rawness of the experience
Yeah. Yeah.
that we absorb, regardless of what we kind of believe or figure out from, because that goes into kind of, I think, a second level, or a different level of uncaging, and coming out of these boundaries, which is detachment.
Mm.
or disidentification. So kind of for me in my chronology, the first one was, I've got some strong barriers that don't allow me to be free or
Yeah.
express myself. Let's remove those somehow, figure out what they are.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second stage is complete acceptance and love of everything that you found you are. And then it doesn't matter that much whether you're on purpose or not on purpose, you're caged or not caged, because you've taken a step out. It's a little bit like the difference between, and I work in virtual reality as well, and I teach meditation there, and do spiritual mentoring. And when you enter virtual reality, you have this, avatar body, and you move through these worlds, but you know that that's not your body, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and that your body is sitting somewhere else, and it's a little bit the same that way. So it's not just about changing the character that you're living in through life, it's knowing you're not the character.
Yeah.
And that stage is, almost a more traditional approach in spirituality, which, and Zen, they say, collect, chop wood and collect water. Like before enlightenment, I chop wood and collect water. After enlightenment, I chop wood and collect water. Or Father Ballister, one of my mentors, used to put it this way, before enlightenment, I'm angry. After
Mm-hmm.
enlightenment, I have anger.
Mm.
I'm not those things anymore. And there's
Yeah.
a level in me that is always so blissful and peaceful, untouched, that I can access. So those are two things that I would say kind of go a bit in parallel. The more traditionalist spiritual masters would say, actually, you don't even need to find your purpose or anything. There is no purpose. you know it's another very profound point of view.
Yeah.
There's no purpose. Your purpose is whatever you want to do, whatever you make of it, and you create it. There's
Yeah.
nothing apart from that. So that's also true.
Yeah. Which is, yeah, this is when we get into the mind-boggling
Yeah.
pieces, for me at least. There's certain things that I've come to really understand, I feel. Not, I wouldn't say I'm quite at the level of living them fully necessarily, like detachment.
Mm.
That one, I know we had conversations about that when we were working together, about how actually it's only when you are detached from an outcome, a
Yes.
desire, whatever it is, that you can go fully in. I
Yes.
know we had that. My
Yes.
initial response was, if I'm
Yes.
not attached to it, then
Yeah.
wouldn't I just sit on my ass and do nothing
Mm.
and not even try? And
Mm.
that for somebody like me is a bit of an uncomfortable idea, shall we say?
Right.
um, but I'm definitely coming more around to
Yeah.
that idea, I have to say. But it was a bit of a light bulb moment for me, was that recognizing, oh yeah, actually, if I'm completely unattached from how something turns out, then that is when I can just be fully in. It's like when I know I'm going to be fine either way, no matter how the outcome works out, then that absolutely frees me up to be completely all in whatever it is in life that I'm doing. So that piece definitely has
Yeah.
landed for
Absolutely.
me.
Beautiful.
Um, but yeah, the idea of, actually, there is no purpose. Like that
Yeah.
one
Mhm.
is yeah, it's a tricky one.
Yes.
Yeah.
But because I love so many traditions, that's
Mm,
when I can't find an explanation in one. I see if somebody else explains it.
yeah.
So for me, Taoism is the explanation of that, and how actually you have these opposites that exist, and that together they give you the truth in a way, and you need to be able to see the
Mm,
opposites and marry the opposites. And I remember when I was in India, this kind of teacher guru said this phrase, that the opposite of a small truth is a small lie, and the opposite of a big truth or a great truth is another opposite great truth. And and this was something that the first time I heard it, I didn't quite understand it. But then kind of through also the eyes of Taoism, I got it. That when you get to these very elevated answers about life, you'll find that they work with the opposite, because they're almost like points of views. You can't attribute them total truth. They're
Yeah.
just points of views. Uh,
Yeah. I guess the closest one that comes to mind for me right now is A Course in Miracles again, which says all of us are special and none of us are special.
Absolutely. Exactly the same.
Yeah.
Exactly the same. Everything is a miracle or nothing is a miracle.
Yeah.
They're both equally true, equally wise.
Yes. Yeah. Fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
Fascinating. So, coming back to your own journey, then you say you've worked with lots of masters. So, yeah, who are these masters that you worked with, and
Yeah.
what did that look like in your
Yeah.
journey?
So the first one I got to was Aruna, and he was a yogi coming from India. Well, he wasn't from India, but he had developed, his practices in India. Was
Hmm.
in an ashram for years. He was from Argentina. He just died a few months ago. And I came to him. He had opened a yoga center in my city, Palermo, probably the first one,
Okay.
uh, again, more than 20 years ago. And I got to him after my awakening, and he was teaching Taoist meditation.
Mm.
And my energies in that moment were like super receptive. I was like, I had just landed here from another planet and had a state of consciousness that I didn't quite understand, for which I said, I came down then. And so the first thing when I went in the room and I saw him, before he started, he just went into a meditation posture and put his hands together like this. And I could see that he had completely concentrated all of his energy,
Mm.
like into one moment. And I realized he was, very, very advanced. And I did this course with him on Taoist meditation, where it's all about creating, almost this immortal body of light. But essentially, you work with your breath and your energies and the tantians, and you draw the energy up. So I did that course, and that was, amazing. And I started practicing that. But my friends were having an awakening at the same time, and they had found another teacher that came from a more Christian tradition.
Hmm.
But this Christian tradition had then been kind of transformed into neutral, because they realized that it was for everybody and it wasn't really linked to a religion in its core. And so I learned that from my teacher Maria, who came from Father Baluster, who was the inventor, another extremely enlightened person. Like the first night that I met him, it was my fourth meditation course I attended. After he talked the first evening and I went to bed, it was like having these, like, I don't know how to describe him, like threads of light just going through my brain and cleaning it. And his words were just reverberating in me and just like clearing all my head, all my energies, like very, and so humble and so full of love and respect, you know? And so I learned a lot about, respect from him, how to
Mm.
respect everything, no matter how opposite or
Yeah.
how evil you might think it is, even, you know,
Mm.
respect it. So, and then, another few teachers like this
Yeah.
that have come.
Yeah.
Dolores Cannon as well. Well, and the method from Dolores Cannon,
Hmm.
QHHT. Which,
Yeah. Yeah, which we'll talk about in a second. Yeah, I guess a couple of things. So one, quite handy that your friends started to have an awakening as
absolutely.
well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my best friends, like brothers.
Yeah. That's amazing, because that can be one of the tricky things when you start to have your spiritual awakening and you start to see things in a different way. And it's almost, the clouds start to clear and you start to really understand things, is when people around you aren't necessarily coming along with you. um it can become a little bit difficult to relate, or just to explain what the hell is going on for you.
Absolutely.
um how do you find it with being, as spiritual as you are and having all these profound understandings, to exist in
Hmm.
the normal world?
Hmm.
um
I think the secret, which I may not have reached for sure, but I'm kind of moving towards, I think, is the balance between the roles that you play.
mm,
So, like we were saying before, one thing is finding your path, one thing is knowing that there is no path. You are not your path, you can create it. And so, in that way, it's like you need to have space for all your parts to express themselves. So if I'm with my daughter, I'm not a spiritual teacher, I'm, a father.
yeah, yeah,
Although for me, spirituality is in everything.
mm,
I'll definitely carry some things there, but I'm a father. And with my wife also as well. If I failed, I've before, definitely many times, bringing too much of the spiritual teacher in where
yeah,
it doesn't belong. But
mm,
if you have all of the different parts that are in balance, and you figure out what the balance is for your spiritual part, which is going to be different for everybody, and you give them that space that it needs, then it's okay. Otherwise, it becomes a bit of a mess and you don't know what you need. Because I make the example like holiday. If you never take a break,
mm,
you're going to feel like, for example, you want to go away for 3 months and it's
yeah,
not right. But if, for example, every week you have a whole day of silence and by yourself, and every month you have, a day or 2 days out, you won't feel like that. It'll be more balanced. You might feel at some point.
yeah,
But so I think that's the secret where we could decide to move towards recognizing the space every part needs
mm,
and giving it,
yeah,
so they don't
yeah,
fight for
yeah,
it.
yeah. I think, my challenge sometimes is with the coach in me,
Mhm.
um, and my natural desire to kind of liberate and help people. I really have to check myself sometimes, when somebody's complaining about something, or just, wanting to offload, that they don't want me to necessarily fix it.
Yeah,
They
me
do
too.
not want to know all of the people who I could put them in touch with who might be able to help.
I'm quite good with that, apart from my wife, so, which is the most important one. So I've got work to do.
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it, when you can really see something that could be really helpful. um but I know I have to, try and take myself back to knowing myself. If somebody was constantly giving me helpful suggestions, and I
Yeah.
would just want to punch them in the face, to be honest. So I have to kind of
Yeah.
presume that other people are going to be quite
Mhm.
similar. Yeah. um
Which, in our spiritual development, all of this is a natural phase in which we get to a point where we're very natural at reading the energies.
yeah,
And
yeah,
if an energy is closed and opposing, we wouldn't even dare. Also, out
mm,
of respect,
yeah,
but it's respect with a sensibility that we've acquired
yeah,
that takes time and clarity to see. Because the more settled you are, the more you can read, distortions in the field, if you want to put it that way.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And again, I've definitely become much more attuned to people's energy, almost too attuned sometimes. And again, we come back a little bit to the detachment side of things. And like you say, if you're grounded within yourself, and you're just at peace and comfortable with yourself, then there isn't an attachment to that, to fixing that person, or that person doing a certain thing. Obviously, we're all human beings, so it kind of ebbs and flows. We're not 100% in that enlightened place all the time. Yeah. um so how, since you've started on your spiritual path, obviously your career has changed dramatically over the past few years, but I always like to try and make things quite practical. How has your spirituality and your evolution changed your life?
Mhm.
What do you see to be the biggest things that have changed?
Um, it's everything really. I wouldn't be able to, you know, enclose it into one aspect.
Mm,
I think the main thing is having found that there is a place inside of me and inside of everybody that is pure love and pure peace. And that knowledge and contact, although sometimes more, sometimes less, is the biggest change, I think, in my life.
mm,
And the biggest thing that spirituality could have ever, you know, gifted me with. And it's beautiful because it makes it, it's the same for me as for anybody else. I didn't find anything that I would have that nobody else would,
mhm.
wouldn't. And so it's very kind of, it gives you a sense of unity. So I think this is the, biggest thing.
Yeah. Do you find as well that it has kind of freed you up to follow the path that you want to follow? Whereas in the past, you perhaps would have been questioning or trying to like stay in the cages
Mm.
that we tend to be in.
I think it depends from what point of view you look at it. From one point of view, what happened kind of before my awakening was also the path.
Yeah. Yeah.
And although it was more obscure and more suffering and more friction, it was what was preparing the next steps.
Yeah.
So in a
Mm,
way, I think it's a different phase and a different awareness, but it's the same journey. And
mm,
um, what is looks more like aligned to purpose is actually a consequence of what was always aligned to purpose.
yeah. Yeah. I know. I can understand that. I think from my own perspective, I've had moments of, sitting on the floor in meditation, like, why does it have to be so hard? And, the answer coming through, well, if you didn't experience this and go through this, then you wouldn't be able to then move on to the next phase of the purpose, which is, using your experiences to help other people. So, like you say, it's always part of the path, even if
Yeah,
we don't like it
absolutely.
sometimes.
And in both the MPA meditation that I learned from Father Ballester and Maria, and in the Dolores Cannon method, you start the process by an overview of all of your life.
Mm,
And what you see, and I've heard this from so many people because I've done my own, but I've listened through hypnosis, is that you can see how everything has led to the next and led to the next, and you kind of get the vision of the puzzle, which is not complete because we're still alive and we got stuff
yeah,
in front, but you get a bigger vision of the puzzle and how actually everything has led to where you are. So as soon as you recognize, the beauty and the perfection of where you are, you've got to recognize that it brought you there,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I've heard other teachers, I can't remember who it is at the moment, it's not coming into my mind, say that, once you're able to take that like higher view and look back, you wouldn't change one single thing that had actually happened in your life, no matter how horrible it might have been, because you see how it all weaves together. Yeah. So we've mentioned Dolores Cannon now a couple of times and the quantum healing hypnosis technique, which is something that I've experienced with you. So let's dive into that a little bit. What exactly is this quantum healing hypnosis?
So quantum healing hypnosis is a process that was created by Dolores Cannon, who died a few years ago, um, and whose work is being carried forward by her daughter Julia and the whole QHHT Academy, in which basically you It's a session that involves um, a regression and a part that is called contact with the higher self. So it developed through the years and adapted itself, and Dolores had different versions until it got to this latest one. So in this latest one, basically, it's almost like a whole life revision and healing. So
Mm.
first thing, the person, creates the list of all of the most important questions in their life, what they really want to understand. So for me, for example, question number one was, why did this spiritual awakening happen to me? Why like this? That was, number one. Um, and so all the most important questions, and then when you come and see me or a QHT practitioners, first we go through your entire life so that you have a chance to review it, tell the story, um, you know, get the subconscious ready to access memories and get a different view. And then we look at the questions, the most important questions of the life. So we do this prep work, which is hours usually. And then we do a 2-hour hypnosis session. And we go through this different visions all the way to contact with this super intelligence, that has been guiding all our life. And there we find the answers to those questions as well as any possible healing that the body can create, which is a lot. The potential is really, really high. So in that state, it's almost like you know what you can do. I always make the difference, in the placebo effect studies, you almost have to be tricked into thinking that you
Yeah.
might have taken something that can do you good. And so your capabilities of healing, let's call it that way to be easy, kicks in and you have an effect. But your capability of healing can kick in regardless of the fact that you've been tricked.
Yeah.
When you go beyond the superficial fundamental beliefs of the mind, then underneath there's the knowledge of it. So that part that can kickstart these processes. But what has been found through this hypnosis is that those processes also are there for a reason. Those limitations, those pains, they're telling us something.
Mm.
So we try to understand what it is that they're telling us, what the lesson is. So it's a very life-changing, or it can be very life-changing, experience, many hours. And then you get a recording of the hypnosis sessions to re-listen so that you kind of reintegrate all of the knowledge, all of the answers, the
Yeah.
healing.
Yeah. So it's a process that I've been through. Oh my goodness, it's probably nearly 2 years ago now,
I think
actually.
so.
Time flies. And I think I came with really the question, well, what is my purpose? Really looking for that guidance. I've probably got my list of questions somewhere still, and I think it might even be time to go and revisit the recording and remind myself of what came up. But I guess for those people who are thinking, oh, hypnosis, I'm not really sure about that. I guess from my own experience of hypnosis, which have had various types, I always feel like I'm completely fully aware of everything that's going on, which sometimes I think the myth with hypnosis is that you're not, that you're completely under the control of somebody else,
No,
but it's not
absolutely
like that.
no. Not only you're not, but we are trained to not ask leading questions
Mm,
so that we don't say, are you happy? We'll say, what are you
yeah.
feeling? So that we have the least amount of influencing. Although with time, I found that the subconscious and the higher self, when you start a process like this, it really knows what it wants to tell you. So
Hmm.
it isn't that easily skewed anyway,
Right.
once you have started a process like that, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, everybody is completely in charge and we just kind of lead the depth of it. We just lead them, closer to where they know. Like
Mm,
I make an example about, dreams. And every night we have a dream, um, a part of ourself has assembled it, a part of our mind has chosen every symbol, every image.
Yeah.
It's assembled it. It's given whatever voice to whatever characters. So there, and if you recognize that there is a meaning, a personal meaning at least in these dreams, then you've got to recognize that a part of you knows what it is.
Mm-hmm.
That part of you has assembled and has chosen every single image. So that in that state of hypnosis, it's a little bit, that's where we go. We go to the part that chooses and knows what is important for us.
Yeah. Mm. And it's quite often like when we have dreams, for instance, we can't make sense of it. And I've had a dream recently with one of my friends who's also she's a reverend, she's a spiritual guide, and it was about death. It was about me kind of choosing whether I was going to die or not, and I was
Mhm,
resisting this. And she
mhm,
came back with, "Well, we know dreams about death are actually about rebirth." And I was like, "Oh wow, okay, now this makes complete 100% sense." And the quantum healing was a little bit like that. It wasn't, I went in with certain questions, and the answers I got were perhaps more abstract than I was hoping for. What is your purpose? And I think my answer was to bring joy. And I was like,
mhm.
well, that's not very specific. you know do you find most people experience that they come with this like
Um,
list of
I
specific questions?
Yeah, I don't remember, your case exactly
Yeah, it's a long
because
time ago.
yeah, and I
I was an angel quite a lot of
yeah,
the time, I think. Yeah.
yeah. But I think in general, it very much depends from the person and what it is that they need to know.
Hmm.
So if joy was the absolute most important thing for you in that part of your life,
Yeah.
then the emphasis would have been put all on that.
Mm.
And
Mm.
if it is something that is more task oriented, then that would come out as well. So it's in different ranges, but usually I try to keep asking until I'm sure that I have the ultimate answer, which is,
Yeah.
what the person would want to know. It depends also on that. That's why we go through the life story.
Yeah. I know the specifics for me that came out were podcasting and speaking was the way
There you
forward
go.
for me. Yeah.
So it was also the way.
Yeah. I still resisted that. I think
Yeah.
that's quite, do you find as well that, I was like, my higher self has told me this, but
Yeah.
my conscious logical mind, when I came back into the real world, was like, I'm not sure. I can't see the way. I can't see the exact path.
Because you're
Um,
back down here.
yeah.
From up there, you got the overtop overview,
Mm,
like a satellite image, so you can see the whole path where it's going.
yeah.
But when you come back down, you kind
Yeah.
of have to, reconnect, or you re-listen in the case of a QHT,
Hmm.
so that you keep kind of peaking up.
Yeah. And it's interesting.
Yeah.
The wiser you become,
Mm,
the more I recognize, yeah, this is where I'm in full alignment. Um, Whether or not it makes sense to anybody else outside of me or to who I thought I used to be or who I thought I was,
yeah.
it's the feeling,
Mm,
that I'm just learning to live by more than the logic,
absolutely. Agree.
which it can be a bit of a scary place for most people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think logic should be there to serve that
Mm,
type of feeling, intuition a little bit. The main choices in our life, shouldn't be made by logic.
no.
Who you're going to live with, where you're going to live,
Mm,
what are you going to do, with most of your time. They should all be passion and intuition. And then your
mm,
mind is there to help you figure out a plan because
yeah.
it needs to be there too. But not
Yeah.
for the main decisions of life. I don't think so.
For sure. There's definitely a few things now that have big things that have come through for me where I'm just like, actually, I'm going with this gut feeling. But I've learned that through not going with the gut feeling
Mm,
and it not turning out so
mm,
well.
mm,
And that you can look back in hindsight and say,
sure.
my gut was telling me this was not the right thing to do, even though the logic and all of the earthly things seemed to
Yeah.
make sense. I just didn't listen to that gut. So I've definitely learned through experience to trust that.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, and that's how I ended up living where I'm living now. It's like it doesn't make logical sense, but it feels good, so I'm gonna do it. Um, what do you find with the hypnosis that is the benefit for most people, if there is
Mm.
something that you think people get from
Um,
it?
for most people, it's, I mean, there are many. The first that comes to mind is that you get almost always a huge sense of relief,
Hmm.
because when you move your attention and your consciousness onto that higher perspective that sees things from above, you're almost reassured, and you're also in a place, of really super conscious love. So when you finish, you've got that reassurance and that energy that is with you, and many people say for many days.
Mm,
um, but also, the second thing is the clarity in the direction, which, again, from that point of view, is very easy, because there's a part of you that knows. But so coming down with that clarity. um,
yeah. Yeah. And then it's about having the courage to
yeah,
move with that clarity.
yeah,
Yeah.
which I've done and not done, because I
Yeah.
use QHT also as a spiritual development tool, so I receive it as well. And I've had six,
Okay.
and so every time I go in, some things I check, some things are new. um and I have noticed when I didn't listen to my higher self, that there was an aspect that could have come to fruition and it didn't, or could have bloomed and
Mm,
it didn't, and vice versa. And some things happen or get clear more down the line, and I realize 6 months later or a year later, oh, that's why it,
yeah.
it told me that.
Yeah. Yeah. Fascinating. So, for anybody out there who is not not necessarily exploring their spiritual path currently, although I think everybody's on a spiritual path, whether they know it or not. Um, what, from your experience, would be like a first step into, yeah, exploring your more spiritual side, getting in touch with it? Where's a good place to start, do you think?
um well, it depends what you're drawn to. I mean, with me, for example, one is like doing a meditation course.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, a beginner meditate, which is being introductory more than beginner, is where you learn techniques to learn more about yourself. Like, what are your fundamental beliefs about certain things in life that might be subconscious? Or how do I better understand dreams? Is there anything in my childhood that has been um, bugging me down, essentially, all the way up to now? And learning about yourself until you learn basically a central meditation technique. So that's one way of doing it. I mean, the paths are many.
Yeah.
um so, I mean, another way of doing it is through just starting to meditate in whatever path you are attracted to, and learning that, and through self-observation then
Mm,
comes also self-knowledge. um, I also offer free like consultation or talk for anybody who is interested in exploring their spiritual side. And with we just have a friendly chat, and then if they want, they can do some work with me, or not. I'll be happy to direct them wherever I
yeah.
feel is right for them. um yeah, or if you're really attracted to something super deep, super immediately, then QHHT
Yeah.
is the thing where you go in with really answering your pressing questions in life, including your spiritual side.
Mm,
Many people have, yeah, revelations that would take years or decades of meditation to get, because it's
right.
a different thing. Meditation stabilizes you more in time and
Yeah.
balance, and this is more about this inner disclosure and knowledge. And
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, again, coming back on my own experience, I started really small with like 10-minute headspace meditations or something, you know, really from scratch. And also from a spiritual perspective, I I think I was guided to Marianne Williamson. That she was my door in, out from organized religion into spirituality. And I feel like sometimes these things appear when you need them.
yeah,
But yeah, like you say, I think it's about what are you drawn to, where do you want to start, what is the right start for you. For me, the right start was, you know, 10 minutes meditation, because I am too busy to meditate kind of person. Who has time for that? And then I realized that I didn't have time not to do it. And yeah, I guess I would from my own experience encourage people that there's just a whole wealth of guidance and awareness and knowledge that's available once you do start meditating and exploring the spiritual side more.
yeah,
It is well worth doing, even if I sometimes try and argue with with what comes through. um, but yeah, so where can people find you, Ignazio, if
yeah.
they?
Just humanspiritualevolution.com. And when you go there, there'll be both like a contact area, or
Yeah.
or a subscription to newsletter if you want to know about events and things, in which I also offer guided breathing meditation that is inspired a bit to the Taoist meditations that I learned in the beginning, and other things that have emerged through QHHT, ancient knowledge, because as you know, that's a whole nother aspect of QHHT.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So
then,
just on my website, and then it's easy
okay,
to get in
I'll
touch.
put links to that in the show notes.
Mhm.
And yeah,
Beautiful.
also, you know, if there is anybody out there who's a bit more advanced, you run on a Monday evening your advanced meditation
Yes.
classes.
Yeah. Anybody who's already meditating and is pretty comfortable with meditation, and so yeah, every Monday evening at 8:30
Yeah.
daytime.
Yeah.
Zoom right now.
Yes, obviously on Zoom right now, not in your little cabin,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
No.
Not too long, hopefully, or not too long. Um, Great. Some really amazing insights and some lovely deep conversation there.
Oh,
So I
thank
really appreciate that. Is there anything else that you want to share before we close?
you. No, I think just thank you, and it's really beautiful to have been
My
invited
pleasure.
here. Yeah, and
Yeah, really enjoyed the conversation. As
yeah,
much for me as it is for my listeners.
yeah,
Uh,
um,
yeah. So
catch up with
thanks.
you, Karine.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining me. And yeah, for everybody who's been watching or listening, really appreciate you taking the time to listen. Hope it's been of value. I'm sure it has. And yeah, I look forward to speaking to you all again in the next episode of the Uncaged podcast. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye bye.